o'clock, and welcome to the new Mary D. Welch Show.
Welcome, everybody. Sorry about that. My mic was muted. Welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure to be here. And anytime I'm before you, I always feel honored. Today, we have with us a podcaster extraordinaire, Mr. Jonathan Jones. He is a coach. He's an author. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, he's a #1 Amazon best-selling author. And I can't tell you, he's a young man. You would not think that somebody that young would be writing best-selling books, but Jonathan is extraordinary. And I like to introduce you to this wonderful young man. Jonathan?
Coach Mary D, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here and just excited for our conversation today.
All right. I've been working with Jonathan for about 2 years now, I think. It's been a little while. And I came to know Jonathan through, hi, Rose. I came to know Jonathan through his dad, actually. That's how I met him. But he, on his own right, is an excellent coach. But his field, before we even get into what you do, John, let's find out a little bit about you. Let me ask you this first of all, Jonathan. Where were you born and raised?
So I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Oh, all right. You went to school and everything?
So I spent from about when I was born until about 3rd grade. I was in Baton Rouge, and then I bounced out, and then I spent some time in Atlanta, and then came to Texas. But the majority of my time has been in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. That's where you're now?
And right now I'm in Dallas. I'm out in Dallas, out in Dallas, Texas now.
Okay. Do you like it there? You like it, Dallas?
I do. I've definitely been enjoying it in Dallas. Dallas has started to grow on me a little bit. But just growing up in Baton Rouge and then transitioning to Atlanta and then coming out here, I'm just grateful to have the experiences between those 3 cities and just being able to, I guess, get blended between all of the cultures.
All right. Well, I know too. You're a young guy, Jonathan. I don't even think you're not 30, are you?
Yeah. So actually, I'm 33, even though I might not look. Well, I'm 32. I'm giving myself an extra year, but I'm 32, even though I know I look very youthful. Which I appreciate you giving me that compliment.
Well, I somehow I didn't even think you were 30, but it says a lot for someone that you're an author. What? No, first of all, tell us. I know that like you say, you're in Texas now, so you're totally different. I don't know how long you've been there compared to when you were in Atlanta. Has it been a couple of years?
Yes. Yeah. So as soon as I graduated high school in Atlanta, which was 2006, then I came out to Texas and went on to junior college and then finished up my 4-year degree in Tyler. And I've really been out here ever since. So I've been out here since 2006, even though I was in Dallas, went out to Tyler, but I still stayed in Texas.
Well, Texas is home now. Then that's what it is.
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that, but one thing you can't say is that I'm a Cowboys fan. But Texas is home, but I am not a Cowboys fan. Let that be known for the record.
Okay, that's okay, because I'm from San Diego, and I live between LA and San Diego. I will probably, and even though the Chargers moved to LA, so I'm always a Chargers fan. So I understand what you mean. You kind of you're rooting for that home team. That's
Always.
just how it is. Okay.
Always.
Well, tell us now. I know too, Jonathan. You're relatively newlywed. You got married this time last year.
So we're coming up on a year being married, and it's been very interesting just going through the midst of the pandemic and us having time just to grow at the house. And one of the things my wife actually said before we got married, she was like, "I'm going to make sure that I cut down on just activities just throughout." Just hanging out and be in different places so that we can spend time as we get our home together and just I think that's one of the biggest blessings of the pandemic. It's just allowed us to have this time to grow and allow us to have this time of, getting to know each other a little bit better. So we've been in the house and we've been married the majority of the pandemic. So that's been very interesting.
Well, this is what they say for a lot of couples. It's either going to bring you together or it's going to push you apart. There's no middle point in here with what we're dealing with. But I'm glad to hear that it's brought the two of you together. I really am. So,
definitely.
Well, now I know too, you, before you became an author, were you always a motivational speaker?
No. So initially, I mean, my story, if we really wind it back, where this whole journey really got started, I definitely want to shout out my mom and my dad, my mom, Rose Jones, and my dad, Dr. Fred Jones. But they always put me in position to where I would connect with people that they knew would challenge me for better. And the people that they connected me with, they would just challenge me in different facets. And in one particular instance, I was actually working at my job where I was working at a retail store, and my attitude was extremely negative. And this was when I was no motivational speaker. This was when I didn't have a book. This was when I was fresh out of college, and I'm working at this job, and I was here for the first 6 months, and I was just excited and glad to be there. Then after that, we will fast forward and we'll see I'm there a year and a half, and now I'm not excited. Now I'm burnt out. I'm tired of looking at these people and tired of being here. And this was when my journey really started, because my manager at the time, she had a coming to Jesus meeting with me, and she was like, Jonathan, this attitude that you have, you're negatively impacting everybody, and you're just creating a problem for all of us. And then she left and went on vacation. And after she came back from vacation, this is 3 days later, and just taking that time, and I'm personally, I'm a man of faith, and taking that time. So through the midst of those 3 days, God really helped me understand that I was complaining for no reason. Because Coach Mary D, just like I do, there are many people all across the world who have it so much worse off than I did at that time. I was complaining about a job that I had. I would ask for more hours and they would give them to me. And then I would complain about being there for more time, which didn't make any sense at all. So that was when everything started. And after having that time of self-reflection in those 3 days, then I created something called the No Complain campaign. And that was just to help people become more optimistic and to help people be grateful for the problems that they have, as well as the ones that they don't. And that was when this whole thing started. That was the birth of the book. And that was the birth of me wanting to begin to start to share a message, and me wanting to begin to connect with other people and encourage them. And that's where this whole journey started from.
Well, I just love the idea of the No Complain campaign. Mm-hmm. That sounds like the name of the title of a book right there. It really does. I mean, that you're telling people, because that's negative energy. What your boss was telling you, it wasn't just about you. You were affecting the people around you with that energy, complaining. And then you find they help you understand something had to change. But it still took you to look at yourself for that to happen.
True. And just like everybody else, everybody out there listening to the show, and just like everybody who will hear the show, it's just one of those things that some of us have the ability to where we're seeing that we're not excited about where we are in our life, right? This could be at work. This could be in your marriage. This could be in your business. Whatever it is, you're seeing that there's certain places in your life you're not pleased at where you're at. And then you can self-reflect like that. Or if, somebody has a close enough friend or a close enough boss or manager or somebody they're in a relationship with, they may help you see that area, even though sometimes you may not ask for it. Or, of course, there's coaches and different things like that who can help you see those areas. But that was a blind spot for me. And I don't think I would have seen it if my manager, Marlene, never pointed it out. But once she pointed it out, then I had to take a step back and I had to ask myself, is what she's saying true? Of course, I didn't want to believe it at first. And then I asked two of my colleagues at my job at that time. And I asked the first gentleman, his name was Josh. I said, Josh, is this true? Do I have a negative attitude? And he said, John, yeah, And I said, that's crazy because your attitude's worse than mine. So then I went to my other friend, Miguel, and these were guys that, you know, I would go to work with. We would have sleepovers, like all of that. Like I'm staying the night at their house on the weekend. We would go out together, all that. And then I asked my friend Miguel, and I was like, Miguel, do I have a negative attitude? Like, what do you think? He said, well, John, are you talking about Tuesdays? Because Tuesdays was when we would go to church. So he was like, Tuesdays, no, you're good. You're up in arms. You're excited. But every other day, you're pretty negative. So after 3 people said the same thing, I still didn't want to believe it. But then after going home and sitting and taking time with myself, and then just like I said before, I really feel that God revealed that to me. And then that's actually something that brought me and my father closer together, because I told him about the No Complain campaign. And then I was just pushing it out on Twitter, and I still have the Instagram page to this day. And that was just the push. That was the push. And then that's what really, I guess that's what really mended my relationship with my dad also, because he wasn't that big and active on social media now. As you know him, Coach Mary D, you know him to be very active now, but he wasn't that active then. And this was a push that I started, just posting pictures and just putting quotes and things out there to encourage people and help people to a spot of gratitude.
I love it. I mean, this is when I want to complain, I say, Lord, I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining. But the truth is, I'm really complaining about whether I admit it or not. Because, I mean, like it or not, I think sometimes we just get in those pity parties. We want to feel sorry for ourselves. We want people to feel sorry for us. And whether it is, you know, something that we admit to, but we kind of want that little empathy and sympathy and all those things. But what you're saying, it wasn't even called for. You were asking for more, you know, to make more money, and they were giving it to you, and then you're complaining because you're at the job all the time. But how many people do this? Every day, people complain about their job. They complain about the people they work with. And then, you know what can happen, Jonathan? They get laid off. And that very job that they complained about, they wish they had, because that very thing was paying their bills, everything. So I really applaud you for, number one, being able to accept when someone said, I mean, it took a while, but somewhere along the line, it's something resonated and there must be some truth in it for them to even say that. So, and then to go to 3 friends, 3, you know, close acquaintances and say, is this true? Is this really, am I really like that? That took a lot of you know, say a lot of guts, because it was hard to hear. Like you said, even when they said it was true, you didn't want to believe it.
Of course not. No. Because I mean, I think we all have this sickness to where we don't see what's wrong. And I did a presentation at one school, and I was talking with them. I was talking with some of the students, and then I said, it's funny when you go to a job interview, they ask you, what are you talented at? Like what are the upsides of you? You're like, oh, I do this great, I do that great, I do this great, I do that. And they say, well, where can you improve? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna need a little bit more time. Because so often Gary Vee always talks about this. He says, lean into the strengths. But when we lean into the strengths, sometimes we're blinded by what our weaknesses are. And there are some weaknesses that may not need to be improved upon in some areas. Some of them, it's, you know, you can take it or you can leave it. But there's some to where we have to be real with ourselves and say, I need to change this now because it's affecting other people outside of me.
I know you mentioned Gary Vee. Gary Vee is one of my favorite motivational speakers. For those of you that don't know who he is just Google him. You'll see he's all over everywhere, it seems like to me. But the only thing is, if you don't like profanity, do not go to Gary Vee's site. I'm just gonna be honest. If you can look past the profanity to the message, you will learn a lot from the man. But for some reason, I can't understand it, but that's not for me to understand. That's just who he is. But the message is very strong and very powerful. I listen to him all the time, but I try to ignore the profanity. That's pretty much it. But I did want to also hit on some things, like you said, that about working on, really what you're saying, you start working on yourself. So before this lady said this to you, do you think you would have gotten there before she mentioned it?
I feel like I would have gotten there, maybe later down the road. It probably would have been some years later down the road. But after she said that to me, then I also began to look back and also began to realize some other things. For instance, like there was a good friend of mine. I consider my brother to this day. His name is Chibuzo Ilanu, and there were times where we were on like a basketball road trip, and I would complain about the food that we were eating. I would complain about the size of the meal, and he was like, "Why are you complaining? Just eat the food." And then I didn't even finish the food. So you know it's one of those things to where I'm able to look back now and just identify other experiences to where the complaining and the negativity was really prevalent throughout my life. But if she never brought it to my attention, I don't know when I would have got there. I honestly don't know.
I think that, I always say those are angels unaware. If you really think about it, that lady changed your life.
Oh, definitely.
Right. Because then all that you did to go back and find out there was truth in it. And now I don't know how did you end up leaving that position? And how did we get on the road to where you became a #1 best-selling author, motivational speaker, all those things?
So I ended up leaving that position probably like 6 months, maybe a year later. And I ended up leaving that position because I was to the point to where I enjoyed the job, but I didn't feel like it was as fulfilling as I was looking to be filled at that point. So then my CEO, his name is Dr. Daniel Prescott. He reached out to me. He was like, "Jonathan, I always got a job for you. You graduated. I told you once you graduate, I had a job for you." So he was working at a nonprofit. And at this particular nonprofit, he said, "I have a program for you to run." And I said, "Okay." I've never put a program together, but he allowed me to be the program director. And I put together after school program for pre-K to 5th grade. So now I'm in this position, and this is when I'm sitting here. Some days I'm reading books to like 30 pre-K students. Other days I'm giving spelling bees and doing spelling tests. And this was when I began to get connected with seeing how much I love serving the youth. So from here, I was here about a year and a half as well. And this job, oh, Coach Mary, this job was, wow, it was exhausting. Okay. I'm talking about a different level of exhausting because we would have to do work in the office. And then from working there from about 9 to like 3, then we have to drive across town and then go do an after school program. We're feeding these kids meals. We're reading them stories. Some of them were having a discipline, and it was just a lot. And we were understaffed. So when people didn't show up, I had to fill in their spots. And imagine 100 pre-K through 5th graders in a cafeteria, all in the same space, nothing separating it.
I don't envy that. Remember, I was a teacher too, so I know, but I don't envy 100 kids anywhere.
No, it was a lot. Okay, it was to say the least, it was a lot. But I grew so much in this position because I'm having to stand up and I'm having to speak to try to get kids into the program. Then I'm having to stand up and I'm having to discipline all these kids and having to reprimand all these kids. And from spending that time there, I think that's what began to cultivate me to be prepared for what was next. So I'm in the office some days and I'm making the edits on my book because this is when I was going through the process and almost done with my book. So I'm editing my book throughout the early mornings and then as I'm doing this and having to manage people, manage kids, then what was next was getting the book published. And from getting the book published, then now life just kicks off. No, it did not. It did not kick off. Of course, I would have loved for it to kick off, but now now so I have the book, and then I'm positioning myself. So I go to graduate school, start graduate school. Coach Mary D, I get kicked out of graduate school.
No.
Yes, I got kicked out of graduate school for plagiarizing. So but it was almost, I'm not gonna say God got me kicked out of graduate school because I don't think that's what it was. I was plagiarizing, don't get me wrong, but when I first started grad school, I wrote the book and I was sitting on it. So I have the book, I've sold some copies, I've done some speaking engagements, but they were here and there because the focus was grad school at this time. But then speaking engagements were starting to pick up. And I'm in the spot in the position where I'm like, oh, I'm not as passionate about going to grad school as I am about speaking.
Right, right.
So then I was just torn in between the two. And then I got kicked out of graduate school.
That's you know what that's called, right?
What's that called?
That's called divine intervention. You don't always recognize. Yeah, because I don't think we recognize it's just because God is having you go in another direction. And not that you would not ever go back or can't go back or anything like that, but I really think, and I'm just using my own life, there's times that he's redirecting you, but you don't know it. Look like you're being redirected because a lot of times it's painful. So you know, I don't want to go through pain. Nobody wants to go through pain, but sometimes that's what we have to go through to get to the other side of it. Did something good come out of that?
Eventually, yes. Eventually. And the reason I say that is because I've seen many of the professors when I was going to the grad school classes, they had the deep bags under their eyes. They looked exhausted. I can tell they've been ripping and running all day, all night. And that's not the life that I wanted to have. And even when I graduated, well, I didn't end up graduating from getting my master's in counseling. But if I did, I didn't see myself going down the route of being a traditional talk therapist. That's not what I aspired to do. Initially, that's what I aspired to do. But seeing how I was able to impact and empower people by speaking to audiences and doing different type presentations, that's where my heart is. That's where my impact is being made. So that's why I'm most excited about the work that I do now and just working with colleges and students and student athletes as well.
Well, I know you're because first you said you learned to speak in front of large groups, so you have to have control. Anytime you can get control of 100 kids, I don't care what their age group is, that in itself is a miracle. How you did that, and you were able to, I know it's discipline involved, I know it's some yelling and screaming involved, but 100 kids, because they have their own agendas. So the fact that you learned how to do that and the control you had over that, I'm sure it helped lead you to speaking in front of groups.
It did. It did. And you're right. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, and there might have been a little bit of bribery for some hot Cheetos or some other type candy. But you know how it goes. You have to, when you're in, it's like you're in war and you're just trying to figure out how to just survive. So that's what we're trying to figure out, how to survive. What can we give these kids to just make them just relax? And so I'm grateful for that experience. I'm grateful for, the after school program we ran. I'm grateful to be able to look back and say, wow, we were able to, feed families over the weekend and provide these children with meals. I'm grateful for all of those experiences. Would I go back and do it again? If I had to. However, I'm just grateful that right now, those experiences have positioned me, like I said before, for whatever is next. So I'm grateful, and I'm just expectant to see what the future holds and to see what God's plans are, for sure.
Well, you said during that time, so in the midst of all of this, you're writing your book. You had left the former position, and now you're a director. And you're working with kids. You're still writing your book in this whole entire process, correct?
Yes. I was still hopping on calls with my dad, and we were going through getting content recorded and getting it prepared to be edited. So yes, it was very exhausting. It was very exhausting. But I think the message there is that when you really want to do something and you're striving to one, going back to what I said earlier, when you're striving to get out of a situation or a place or a mindset that you're currently in, you're going to have to do something that's outside of yourself. You're going to have to talk to the inner man, the inner woman, the inner person, and say, I don't like where I am right now. What do we need to do to get out of here? I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to be painful, but at the same time, it won't last always. So I had to go through that. And Coach Mary D, I was tired of looking at the book. I was tired of editing the book. I was tired of reading through the book, and the book hadn't even been finished yet. I'm like, oh God, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Can we get done? I don't want to look at it. I don't want to edit it. but now I'm grateful.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's a process.
it really is. It really is. But then when you're able to, take a step back and look at the finished product and you're pleased and you know that there are no errors in your book or minimal errors in your book, and you're willing to put your book up next to whoever's book, then it was all worth it. It was all worth it. The exhausting time when I was having to edit it and reread it and all that other stuff.
I know the feeling. I know when I wrote Saying No Nicely, which is the book that's not a children's book for me. And I didn't want to put it out, Jonathan. My children's books have been doing so well. I held that book and would not release it. And then finally I said, okay, you're going to have to let it go. You're going to have to let it go. But for me, something happened for me. It's when Kobe Bryant's helicopter went down. It changed my life. And that's when I went on and published it. But before I published it, I had to edit. I did another editing right before publication. And it went from 62 pages to 50 pages. So 12 pages. That last editing, I went down to, you could say, bare bones. So I know what you mean. When you read the book so much, you're almost sick of your own book. It's like
Yes.
But you survived it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing well and still doing well. And that tells you have an excellent product.
Yeah. And I think that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, is there going to be a number 2?
And I think that's one of the great things about writing your book right. Like my dad says, write your book right the first time. It worked for you for a lifetime. I'm planning on writing a second book. I've gone through different ideas, but I'm not sure which way I want to take it. That's the biggest challenge for me right now. I'm not sure which way I want. Do I want to do a revised edition of Process? Do I want to do a book for student athletes? Do I want to do a book to help people speak? So that's just that's been the biggest challenge for me here as of lately. It's just honing in. What would my second project be? What does that look like? I do plan on writing a second book, and I feel like after I write the second one, then they'll begin to roll after that. But that's just where I'm stuck. I'm in a conundrum, just trying to figure out which way to take it.
That means you have so many options. That's really what it means, that you're still trying to narrow it down to that. What do you want to say? Well, one area too, because you're a newlywed, that could be an area. Your first year being married. What is that like to be a newlywed during the COVID era? What has that been like? That could actually be a book that people would be interested in reading about. And that you and your wife could do couples on what it's been to go through this COVID together as newlyweds, because you face this together.
Oh, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. I'd have to talk with her and see if she's down for that, because it would come next. It would be speaking. So hey, I'd have to just see.
Yeah, you never know. It's so many now with this corona. Unfortunately, what we're facing as a world. This is the world pandemic. So many things have come out of this. Dating. How do people date during the pandemic? Because how do you date? The person could be sick and you don't even know they're sick, and all these things. It's so much going on in our society. So I would tell you on your next book, I know I'm not even worried about it. You will figure out what direction to go to. You'll figure out how to get there. You'll figure all of that will be figured out for you. I know too, and some of the audience may or may not be aware, you are an excellent podcaster. Why don't you tell us about your podcast and all the ins and outs?
So initially my first podcast I started when I was talking with a videographer I worked with at the time. He's a great guy. His name is Reginald Titus. He produced Natural Hair, the movie, which is a great film. If you have not checked it out, it's a great film. And I was talking with him back and forth, just trying to figure out how can I ultimately be able to extend my reach, and expand my audience. And he was like, John, you probably should do a podcast. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea. I'm not going to do a podcast because I don't want to do a podcast. So why would I even think about that? And then a couple of days later, I said, Reginald, I have an idea. He said, what's that? I said, I think I'm going to do a podcast. So after having that conversation with him and going back and forth, then I decided that I wanted to do it. And the title of the podcast was Speak Your Success. I'm still to this day, I don't know how I came up with that. I have to give God credit because I know I didn't wake myself up that morning and just drop the idea in my own head. And just the focus of the podcast is the tagline, which is speak your success, believe in your greatness, and create the life and business of your dreams. So I talk about tangible self-help strategies for young professionals and for millennials. And I mean, I'm up to today I released the 267th episode. So wanted to do that podcast to serve my millennial audience. And then I also started a second podcast, which is called Beyond the Ball. And I started that at the beginning of the pandemic. And that's just for student athletes to just be a resource for them and help them to efficiently transition and to succeed beyond their degree.
I mean, this, and you know, I haven't started my podcast. I shouldn't say that. I did one. And I don't know why I haven't pushed podcasting, but I do want to. I see so many people, it's just another avenue to speak to your community. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing really right now can be turned into a podcast. But I just have to just stick with it. I don't know what it is, because I know you have to be consistent. And that's the one thing I just haven't gotten to, the consistency of a podcast. But I'm looking into it. I definitely would like to definitely have a podcast going. So yours is Speak Your Success.
Speak Your Success.
Okay. And then, but the title of your book is
the title of my book is Process. Right there on the screen. Process.
Okay, they got it.
Surprisingly simple behaviors to skyrocket millennials to success.
Right. Okay. So I don't know why I thought it was the same, but I know about the Speak Your Success. And now when is your podcast? When is it on?
Mm-hmm. So for Speak Your Success, I release an episode every Monday. So just releasing episodes, and like I said, it focuses on everything from mental health to how to start a t-shirt business for under $300 to just topics all down the line. And then for Beyond the Ball, like I said, I just focus on student athletes and different tools and strategies they may need to be successful.
Do you have, are they back to back, or they're just different? Are they both on Mondays?
So Speak Your Success is on Mondays and Beyond the Ball is on Wednesdays. But they're both are housed on my YouTube channel, which is just Jonathan Jones Speaks, where, you know, I share the podcast content, and I also share additional video content, just to continue to keep people inspired, keep people encouraged, and just to educate and equip people through this time. Because I mean, we're still in a pandemic, even though you'll see half the country that won't appear to be, and then the other half of the country where they have all the masks, they have all of the face guards and the screens and everything else. But I know this is a time where people are looking for encouragement. People are looking for hope, and people may be tired of watching shows on Netflix. They may be tired of watching Hulu reruns, but they want to see how they can elevate their brand, see how they can elevate their lifestyle. So that's why I just continue to podcast and just want to continue to serve and support the people.
I know too. Like I said, I think I even mentioned it to you about it. I said, "Oh, Jonathan, what do I need to do to start a podcast?" You told me to go to Anchor, I think it was, and to start there. Do you want to give people that may not even know where to begin how to start a podcast?
So there's a few different ways. For the people who are out there and they're wanting to start a podcast, and they're like, John, I want to start a podcast. I don't know where to start. But at the same time, I have a cell phone, which would be the majority of people, I would assume. And Anchor.fm is a great place to start, because you can have a cell phone and you can connect headphones into your cell phone and you can record on the go. So you can do it from the Anchor app, to where you can record the podcast, you can edit the podcast, and you can even like do intro music and outro music all on the Anchor app. And I think that would be the best place to start. I know that'd be the best place to start. But outside of that part of actually doing the podcast, first you want to identify who this message is for. Like when you asked me, I said, Speak Your Success is for my young professionals and for my millennial audience. That's very intentional and it's very strategic because they're going through my journey just as I am going through my journey. And I'm just sharing with them just, what I've gone through. Just like I said, how to make t-shirts or about
Right.
counseling. So that would be the biggest piece. Identify who you want to serve, identify how often you're going to do the podcast, and then from there, go on Anchor and then say, I want to talk about, I'm just going to say this just for the sake of saying it, but somebody might have a podcast and might want to say, I want to talk about politics. And then they can have a podcast about politics and just breaking down and educating people who's a Democratic Party, who's a Republican Party, what does incumbent mean? And that's 4 episodes right there.
That's excellent. Because I can almost guarantee there's somebody that they don't even know that somebody made, but there's usually always somebody needs to learn what is it or how is it. Because even when I did like I said, I did my whole, and even I was saying, I'm wondering will they want to listen to me? And that could be somebody else's issue of, will people care what I have to say? What made you realize somebody does care what you have to say?
Yeah, so it would the biggest piece right there is it's not the caring if somebody is listening or not. It's just the act of doing. It's just the repetition of doing. And for me personally, I wasn't necessarily thinking if people care what I say or they didn't, but it was just me putting it out there, knowing that whoever needs to hear it will eventually hear it. And I still believe that to this day. Whoever needs to hear this show will hear it, because there are people who have sent me messages from different parts of the country, different countries, and from older episodes, like really older episodes. And so just getting in that space, and just like I was talking about before, just getting in a position, in a posture of service. It's not the fact of if the person will get to it, but it's just the factor of me serving, me wanting to add value, me wanting to encourage, and me wanting to just inspire. So by way of me identifying my why, right? My why is to inspire people, and by way of sharing information, because I believe that if there's anything that I've learned throughout the course of my self-help, self-development journey, if there's anything I've learned that can impact and add value to somebody else, I don't want to withhold that information. So I share it on podcasts, I share it through speaking engagements, I share it through conversations, and that's just me knowing my why. Because by nature, and I believe my gift is to be a teacher, and my gift is to help encourage and be an exhorter, as the Bible calls it, someone who exhorts, right? So understanding those things, that's identifying my why, and then that allows it to be that much easier for me to identify then the what and the how.
So really what you're saying is you're sharing with the world. If you know it, you want to share it with your audience of how to make this world a better place. Mm-hmm. Your ability, you're giving it. So it's really not even something that it's all good. It's all, how do I share this goodness with everybody?
Definitely. I mean, it's sharing goodness, but that's why I said before, it's about me. It's about me sharing my experiences. And I've gone on the podcast, talked about good times. I've talked about bad times. I've talked about when I used to have to drive the Uber, and when I would be out there delivering phone books door to door. Like, I give them it all, because I don't want somebody to have a skewed picture or a skewed idea of who Jonathan Jones is. Jonathan Jones is a guy who struggled in math class and failed the same math class 3 times. Jonathan Jones got kicked out of grad school. Jonathan Jones has worked for FedEx and UPS and tossed boxes off the back of trucks. Like, don't, please, whoever out there is listening, don't get it twisted. I didn't get to where I'm at overnight, and I'm nowhere near where I desire to be for my own life. But at the same time, I think that I've been able to accumulate a certain level of success, praise God. But at the same time, I'm not done working, because if I'm done and there's somebody who looks up to me, or somebody's like, John, you inspire me, and I see you reaching for this goal or that goal, but then you stop reaching, then what am I doing to the person who's inspired by the work that I've done prior? Right. Then I'm giving them permission to stop. I'm giving them permission to say, well, I've done enough. But I don't think I ever believe there is enough. And the reason I say that is because if we've all been given a God-given gift, but then at the same time, let me just put it in this term. So if that gift is a fire, okay, and everybody's around the fire, we getting warm by the fire, we're roasting marshmallows, we're eating, we're cooking, we're doing all these things around the fire.
Right.
But then if the fire goes out, now people aren't eating, now people aren't being warm, now people don't have the fire to be light. So understanding that, I have to continue to throw logs on my fire because somebody is depending on me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And you're saying, which is absolutely true. This is what a friend of mine told me. You don't even know who's really watching you and admiring you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to know, especially when you are you're visible, you're out in the community, you're out speaking, you're out doing these things. So you have people that are admiring what you're doing, as they say, from afar. And they may never tell you how watching you do those things, you're encouraging them to live their dreams and live their life. And what you really did, honestly, is you said, you know what, I only have one life to live. Let me go on and do the things I want to do with it, instead of things that society, quote unquote, says, this is what I have to do with it. Because that's why I believe it's what you said, Jonathan Jones Speaks. That's been a creation. Oh, hi, Elaine. And I forgot to tell everybody, you can send comments in, we'll read them. It says, Jonathan, you're talking and speaking is encouraging and inspirational, being truthful. And that says something to others. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Elaine Wilson. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Elaine.
So I would tell you, you really are. And to be a young, I say you may not think you're a young person, but you really are a young person. You're just getting started. So I just want to tell you, thank you for following your dreams. Thank you for keeping going. Hi, Jessie Rose. Very informative information. I got cut off. I didn't know. Oh, you don't know what happened. Oh, welcome back. That's actually one of my cousins.
Oh, very nice.
I know. I thank God for my family. They're so supportive. But I would tell anyone, if you're interested in doing a podcast, I would highly encourage you, go to Anchor FM. And because just speaking to Jonathan, he's encouraging me to go back and start my podcast all over again, keep going. And actually use my previous my previous shows can be turned into podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Already have the show, the guests are, now they're not edited. I don't know, do they need to be edited?
I mean, it just all depends on the way that you want to, it just all depends on the way that you want your podcast to be presented to the world. Because I'm just going to go with Gary Vee because we mentioned him earlier. But for instance, Gary Vee, the name of his podcast is Gary Vee's Audio Experience. And he cuts stuff that are keynote presentations. He cuts stuff that are meetings, and he takes whatever. If it's audio, then it can be a podcast. So you can cut it, you can edit it. Of course, when you edit it, it will take a little bit longer versus if you just record something and then just shoot it out there to the world. But it just all depends on how you want to present your podcast to the world.
Okay. I'm probably more on the fly, I think, than anything. I don't really do a lot. I probably need to do a lot of editing. But I just so happens I haven't done as much editing. But I'm getting around to it. All of this is to me a learning experience. And I'm just taking it one day at a time and learning how to maneuver, I guess you could say. But I would like to tell the audience, if you have a question for Jonathan, just type it in and we will read it, just so you know. Just take your time, type the question in, and it'll come up on the screen, and we'll be glad to read it for you. If anybody has some questions. But I wanted to make sure, Jonathan, that you leave your website too, your jonathanjonespeaks.com. We want to make sure anyone that would like to get in touch with Jonathan, he is a motivational speaker. He has been a speaker to over 100,000 students. Think about that. 100,000. That's a lot. That's not a small number. No, it's not. And like I said, I was a teacher. I think once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher. But I was in the classroom teaching for over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I taught. I was a history teacher and decided one day that it was time to that life was too short, truthfully. I looked around and said, okay, is there anything else I could do?
Mm.
I need to know now because I'm not getting any younger here. And that's what made me look at my life and make some changes. And honestly, I tell you the truth, Jonathan, I didn't know. I left a position. It reminds me some things about how your dad did. I literally stepped out on faith. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I had no clue. But God opened the door, and one thing has led to another. So I will tell you, I just keep going down that road.
Mm.
Now, on your podcast, so you have your book, which is out. You have the book.
Mm-hmm.
You have the podcast that's going. Is there anything else going on that your coaching programs? You also coach.
Yes. So, Speaker Success Academy was something that was created because just like I said before, going to and I guess pulling off from the podcast with ultimately just like I said, the goal before, or the tagline is speak your success, believe in your greatness, and create the life and business of your dreams. So that's what I'm helping people do. I'm helping people hone in how can they speak for pay, speak their success. Then the next part is working on the belief as we go through the program. As you know, Coach Mary D, mindset is one of the biggest areas that many people struggle. So helping people in the area of mindset, helping them cultivate their mindset, helping them be able to think like a giant, as my dad says, and getting them to master their mindset and understanding that your mind can either help you prosper or it can help you plummet. So doing that. And then the last part is creating the business, life and business of your dreams. A lot of us want certain things. And let me say it like this, Coach Mary D. I'm a person who likes expensive things, and the expensive things might just be expensive coaching programs. Okay. I told my wife that the other day. I'm to the point now, I don't need my shoes to look any kind of way. I'm putting on shoes for comfort. So if they cost a little bit more, but they're more comfortable, that's what I'm into right now. I'm not even big on wearing fancy clothes or anything like that anymore. That's not what I'm on. That's not where I'm trying to be. But the focus for me is now just being able to position myself to where I can create a legacy for my family, positioning where our children that we do not have yet, and we're not even in that stage. But when we began to talk about that they'll be positioned before they're even here. So I'm just really taking the thought process of God, and because God created the firmament before we were here, he gave us a place to go before we even came. So that's the mindset that I'm trying to bring in. That's the mindset I'm going to bring into my family and for my children and for their children. So ultimately, that was a long way of saying that's what I want people to be able to cultivate for their families, for their livelihoods. And why not use your story and use your voice to do that? Why not create a podcast to share your message and share your experiences? Why not? Because there's so many other people, like we said before, that are outside of the campfire. They're outside of your gift, and they're just trying to get warm. They're just trying to eat. They just need a little bit of light. But if you don't keep tossing logs on your fire, then your fire is going to go out. If you don't use it, you will lose it.
Oh yeah, I always say if you don't use the gift that God gave you, he's going to give it to somebody else.
Oh, definitely.
That's why as you know, with my children's books, like when a thought comes to my mind, I quickly write it down because I had to learn if you don't, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't move on, act on these things, and next thing you know, they're gone. And if you ever notice, you look around and you see somebody doing something that you thought you should be doing, or writing what you thought you should be writing, and then you look up and it's like, well, why didn't I write that? I have actually heard people say to me, I could have wrote that book. And I always say, you're right, you could have. Now, why you didn't, I don't know, but but you could have. It wasn't like the gift only comes to one person. I think there's multitudes of gifts. That's what I'll say. There's multitudes of gifts.
Yeah, and I mean, the world is full of shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I mean, I could have, I should have, I would have, but you didn't. So that's where I think we have to get to the place. If somebody decides to say, I like where I am in my life, I'm 100% satisfied with where I am, and I'm just going to live this life doing what I do every day, going to this house, driving this car, whatever it might look like, no matter how big, no matter how small. If you're content with that lifestyle, then live that lifestyle. However, here's the caveat. Don't talk about anybody else's. Just let people, let Coach Mary D write all the books that she wants to write. You could have wrote the book, but you didn't. So how about you just don't say anything at all? And I think that's where we just have to get to it. Because think about it. When we watch sporting events and when we go to certain events or when we go to different churches or wherever we may go, when we're talking sporting events, the best coaches are always in the stands. The best coaches are always at home. Like everybody tells you what you should have did, what play you should have ran, but you're not on the field. And I think that's one of the things we also have to remember as well, is that scoreboard watching is so dangerous because we're watching everybody else do these great things and we're just watching people's success. And then after we watch it, at first we admire it. And then we get to the point to where we covet it. And then we get to the point to where we're jealous of it. But if you were too busy doing your own thing, that would all be irrelevant. You wouldn't have time to think about this person's gift isn't as good as mine, or I could have wrote this book, but I didn't. No, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Just go home and go watch TV. Go home and write something that you want to do. But don't try to throw salt on everybody else's party.
When it was a lady that shared that with me, and I was taken aback when I heard it, but I said, okay, you have to be kind, Mary. I had to have that conversation. I said, you got to be kind, because I really wanted to say, like I said, write it. It's not like as you know, when we write books, we're not the only ones out there writing books. There's millions of people writing books. But the difference is we didn't just start the book, we finished the book and you published the book. And every single step was hard. I'm not going to sit here and say everything I did was easy. I don't know about you, Jonathan, but all the books I write, it is so hard to get through, to hire illustrators, to hire people, at least for me. So I tell anybody, you can do it, but you got to stay with it. You got to, not only just write it, you got to write it. You got to edit it. You got to do all those things that it takes.
Process.
You got to see it through. But I would tell anybody, you can do it, but this is what I've learned, but everybody's not going to do it.
Oh, no.
No matter what. They're not going to do it. Even your speaking engagements. You speak virtually. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I have been speaking virtually since the start of the pandemic. I'm not sure, like 10 or 12 engagements, something like that I've done. But yeah, it's been a different challenge, but it's also been a greater opportunity. So now that when I am back in person, whenever that time comes, that I'll be sharper than I ever was, because presenting over Zoom and trying to create an experience virtually is different. However, people are still getting the information and people are still enjoying the content, and I'm grateful. But at the same time, as I look over the events and not being cocky or conceited, but I put in the time to make sure that it's a successful virtual engagement. I put in the time to ask myself questions virtually as if I was the audience. I put in the time and I walk through my presentations 3 and 4 and 5 times and making sure that it has the smoothest flow. So, I mean, sometimes people see the flyer of where I may be speaking, or other times people might say, just like the woman said to you, I could have wrote that, or that looks easy. Yeah, it looks easy because we've invested the hours and the years to make it easy. But at the same time, it's still a challenge, and there's still things that you can't account for that will happen. So it's just all a part of the journey.
This is what I don't know where I heard this from, but it was that you can always tell when it's a professional because it looks easy. Because what we're doing, it makes it look easy, meaning that it doesn't look like it's hard what we're doing. It looks like, oh yeah, anybody can just jump up and write the book or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, and if I look at it like this, look at Tiger Woods. Doesn't he make golf look easy? It looks like anybody can get out there and play golf. Look at Serena. They make it look easy?
Lord.
All the hours they put in because of all of those the experiences, what it took. So that's why we make it look easy. That
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I mean, it's just one of those things to where, You know, as people find that passion, or as they find that why, you know, then they get devoted, then they get driven, and then they understand that people need to hear from them. So then they want to do it more, and then they want to make it look easy, because ultimately you want to be able to convey a message, or you want to be the messenger to deliver the message that you know somebody else needs. So I'm with you on that, Coach Mary D.
So that must mean you're definitely a true professional, Jonathan, because you're making it look easy. You make, you know, it looks like anybody can get out here and do these things. But like you said, which they don't see, they didn't see when you're giving those virtual conferences and you're speaking, nobody sees all those hours that you spent behind the scenes getting ready for that. Nobody sees that you didn't just show up. You can't come and sit down. It's not like that. That you put time in, that you are invested in what you're doing, and you want to make this a good experience for your audience. That's what people don't know. They don't know about that backside, the backstory to why you're where you are and able to do those things. Because I know I'm one of your dad's masterminds, and I try my best to be there on Mondays. Because I don't want to miss anything. I try not to miss anything because I'm gonna learn something. I'm gonna glean something. There's gonna be something new that I didn't already know the day before. So I've learned that every single day I try to learn one new thing. I'm not trying 100 new things, but if I can learn one thing today that I didn't know yesterday, at the end of a year, I've learned over 365 things that I didn't. And that keeps me, I may not, like I said, I'm not, as they say, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but it keeps me on top of things. It keeps me paying attention to what's going on. And I like to pay attention and see what's going on in society and the world. But as we're coming to a close, are there any final words you'd like to give our audience today, Jonathan?
So I spoke to Texas A&M University staff and some of the professors, and one thing that we talked about was just be where your feet are, right? Be where your feet are, and that's the message I'm just gonna leave with people, because I know right now where there's so many distractions, there's so many TV shows, there's so many people pulling at us for attention, there's so much going on. But be where your feet are. If you're at home with your significant other and you're having dinner, put the phones to the side for a second. Like, have a conversation with that individual. If you're going for a walk, this is one thing me and my wife do. We were going for a walk yesterday, and we keep these little cards to where they have questions, and then we ask each other questions, and we're learning more about each other. Even though I know we're a year in, about to be a year in, but that's one area we're really focusing on in this house, is being where your feet are, being present with one another, and just spending that time. And that can apply wherever, right?
Yeah.
Wherever. If you're in your business and you're trying to figure out, well, what do I do next? What does somebody need from you right now? Sometimes life can be so easy, but sometimes we complicate it and we make it so hard. Because think, Coach Mary D, when you were a child, when I was a child, there weren't many things that mattered. It was just like, when are we eating? When's nap time? Or what's our favorite book, right? It was those few things that mattered. But then once we get older, then we get mature, and then we get too grown. But we have to go back to that state, that childlike state, and just be present in the moment with that one toy. And that's it.
All right. Well, Jonathan, we would like to thank you for spending this time with us this afternoon. I can't thank you enough. I know you're a busy man. You have things to do and things going on, but we here at the Mary D. Welch Show would like to thank you for coming and being one of our special guests today. And I hope that you'll come back again.
Coach Mary D, anytime. And I certainly appreciate you just for the opportunity and the great work that you're doing. Like I've told you before, I'm excited for you. I'm proud of you. Just the way that, you're creating something that's foundational and monumental for these young leaders that one day, you're writing books for somebody who might one day end up being the president, or end up being the attorney justice, or whatever, whoever. So I mean, I thank you, and I'm excited. Just keep on writing those books, Coach Mary D. Keep on writing those books.
Thank you, Johnson. Thank you, Jesse. I really appreciate your comment. Thank you, audience. We will see you next week, next Monday, and we are having next Monday from San Bernardino Unified School District. She's on the school board, and her name is Gwen Rogers, and she will be our guest next week. Thank you all, and I will see you guys next Monday at 1 o'clock.